Welcome back, students. So in this lecture we will try to understand what is iteration planning and pragmatic planning here. So iteration planning is going to discuss about how we are going to plan the total number of iterations in your project development. So at each and every iteration, what should be your outcome? So throughout your life cycle model, how many iterations are supposed to be by default taken into consideration will be discussed by your iteration process along with their actual results or the outcomes of your each and every phase. Say in your iteration process, we have 4 different types of iterations that are supposed to be performed at 4 different levels. First is your inception iteration process or inception iterations. So this particular inception iteration, it actually focus on architecture prototype of your software. So what are the basic requirements, what is the baseline of that particular requirements, and how that particular architecture is supposed to be created. So that is majorly focused on your inception phase here. So this is going to majorly focus on the executable framework for your project development. Second is your elaboration iterations. So elaboration iterations, it is going to work on or it is going to focus on the architecture baseline once again and architecture prototype once again along with the architecture baseline. So what is this elaboration iteration going to do is, first it is going to initialize your iteration related to your elaboration, like whether you want to extend your requirements or not. Then it is going to focus on what should be the worst case related to your project development architecture here, what should be the worst case related to your data processing. So that is taken as your next step after defining your architecture. Next it is going to work with the control flow of your architecture. First it is going to focus on what should be the architecture here and second, worst case for your process flow, and third it is going to focus on worst case for your control flow, right. So your elaboration iterations is going to focus on these 3 parts and it is going to follow this particular sequence in order to perform your iteration iteration. Next, construction iteration is going to focus on what should be the release after your construction is done, and your transition iteration is going to focus on how to transit your software. So here in your inception iteration, you are going to perform majorly one iteration here, and that particular iteration is focused on your architecture prototype. What is the prototype expected out of your inception? And next in your elaboration iterations, you are going to perform 2 different iterations. So this is also majorly going to have a focus on your architecture prototype, and this time this should be a refined architecture and what is the baseline on which your architecture was built. And third, as I already said, construction iteration, it will go with 2 different types of iterations. You are going to perform 2 iterations here. First is going to be the product with your alpha release, and next is going to be the product with your beta release. So alpha release, if it consists of any particular errors or if it consists of any particular problem, then you can fix them and go with your beta release. And your transition phase, it is going to perform only one iteration, and that is purely related to your final product release here. So these are the different types of iterations you are going to plan throughout your project development. So what is this pragmatic planning? So planning is not an easy task, planning is a risky task here. So whenever say any software engineer or a software manager, if he is working with n-1th iteration, assume. So in this case, he should actually expect what should be the outcome of this particular n-1th iteration, along with planning for the next 2 iterations also. Along with, he should be able to plan what should be the next 2 iterations. So if this particular planning is not clear, the project manager will end up with non-expected results, right. So unless and until you are like if this particular planning is not visible to all the parts of your software, then you may not own your planning process here. So the more convenient or the more visible to all the parts of your processes, the more the project person or the project manager can own his project planning here. So whenever you are planning, you should keep in mind that whenever you are working with nth iteration, you should plan ahead with n plus 2th iteration also. So that is all about your iteration and pragmatic planning. So pragmatic planning will focus on what is the real planning that is being done in the project. So this is all about your lecture now. Let us meet in your next lecture. Thank you.